This is the third video this week on the Minoan civilization. The last video looked at the archaeological evidence that came from the town of Akrotiri on the island of Santorini, also known as Thera. That's a picture of what the town looks like having been excavated on the right hand side. Now, this island and the volcanic eruption that took place there can tell us an awful lot about what happened to the end of the Minoan civilization, we think. Looking at archaeological evidence based on the date of the different archaeological finds that the excavators found suggested that the massive volcanic eruption at Santorini occurred around 1500 BC. A scientific form of dating called radiocarbon dating suggests that this volcanic eruption was earlier though, around 1645 BC to 1600 BC. Dendrochronology, or you might know that as tree ring dating, dates the eruption to 1628 BC. Possibly the dendrochronology dating is the most accurate indication of when exactly the volcanic eruption occurred. The effects of the volcano will have affected the growth of trees, since the volcanic dust, ash and gases will have cooled the earth so profoundly that stunted the trees' growth. In the last year or two, reinvestigations of the archaeology has led to more of an acceptance of a date roughly around 1600 BC, but to confuse things, there may have been another massive volcanic eruption elsewhere in the world around that time. So what about the impact of this volcanic eruption? Well, such an eruption would have had a huge environmental impact on Minoan civilization. Quite apart from the big tsunami that was very devastating, we can see the tree growth was impacted by the eruption. Because tree growth was interrupted, it's very likely too that crop growth would have been negatively impacted. In historic periods, anything that affects crop growth will have had a big impact, much more so than today, because it will have impacted the population, because the population back then relied on local crop production. It's very possible that there was a big famine at this time as a result of the eruption. Others say that the settlement at Akrotiri was also devastated by earthquakes associated with the eruption. The tsunami that hit Crete will have contaminated many wells with seawater, meaning that there could have been less water to drink in an already arid environment. We also don't know what time of year the eruption was. After all, we don't even know exactly what year it took place. This means that it could have devastated the Minoan ships and harbours if it was the time of year for sailing. Since we think that the Minoan civilization relied on trade, it could well have very badly disrupted their economy. This could have made the Minoans in turn more inward-looking and focused on recovery, rather than being able to respond to any external pressures. Whatever happened, and this is all really guesswork, archaeologists think that the short time period between the eruption and the conquest that we think we can identify by the Mycenaeans are linked somehow. Current thought is that it didn't end the Minoan civilization, but certainly it would seem that Knossos was the only palace to be really active after around this date, and this has led some classicists to call this the post-palatial era. It's possible though that the Mycenaeans controlled it. Some archaeologists have suggested that the eruption allowed for a more militaristic elite to emerge. The end of the palace at Knossos is either due to outside influence from the Mycenaeans or the possible overthrow by the Mycenaeans. The occupation by the Mycenaeans may be what's preserved in the Minotaur myth, since the main character Theseus is a Mycenaean. You should go and have a look at that myth next.